I'm 78 years old and I haven't taken a single prescription drug in over 5 decades. Not because I got lucky, but because I learned something about plants that most people alive today have completely forgotten. We live in an age where the human body is treated like a machine that breaks down and needs replacement parts. Pills for pressure, pills for pain, pills for sleep, pills for the side effects of the other pills. And almost nobody stops to ask how humans survived for thousands of years before any of that existed. The answer is growing in the ground. It always has been. But here's what most people miss. This isn't folk medicine, it isn't superstition, and it isn't alternative anything. This is the original medicine. The one that built the immune systems that allowed our species to survive plagues, famines, infections, and centuries of brutal living conditions. Pharmaceutical drugs are 200 years old. Medicinal plants are 40,000 years old. Those numbers matter. When people hear grow your own medicine, they think of chamomile tea in lavender sachets. Nice, gentle, decorative. That's the surface level, and that's exactly where most people stay. But it goes deeper than that, far deeper. Plants are not passive organisms sitting in the soil waiting to be harvested. They are living chemical factories, producing thousands of bioactive compounds in direct response to their environment, their predators, their diseases, and their stress. Every compound they make has a function, and what's extraordinary is that many of those functions are directly compatible with human biology, not by coincidence, but because we evolved together. Humans and plants share a coevolutionary history that spans millions of years. Our receptors recognize plant compounds because we grew up together on this planet. Take something like echinacea. Most people think of it as a cold remedy, something you grab at the pharmacy when your throat starts to scratch. And that's true, but it's also the smallest possible understanding of what that plant does. Echinacea doesn't fight your cold. It trains your immune system. It stimulates the production of white blood cells. It increases the activity of macrophages, the cells that identify and destroy foreign invaders. It modulates cytokine expression, which is the communication system your immune cells use to coordinate a response. When I grow echinacea, I'm not growing a remedy. I'm growing an immune trainer. The difference is enormous. One treats a symptom. The other builds the system that prevents the symptom from ever taking hold. And here's what most people miss about growing medicinal plants versus buying them. The growing is inseparable from the medicine. A dried echinacea capsule from a shelf has been processed, standardized, diluted, and packaged months or years after harvest. The living root pulled from your garden in the fall contains the full spectrum of compounds in the ratios and forms that evolved over millions of years. Whole plant medicine and isolated compounds are not the same thing. Aspirin is derived from willow bark, but willow bark also contains compounds that protect the stomach lining from the very irritation that pure aspirin causes. When you isolate the active ingredient, you lose the wisdom of the whole. This is the principle that changed everything for me 50 years ago, and it's the principle that modern botanical medicine is now rediscovering. The entourage effect, the way compounds in a plant work synergistically, where the whole is more effective than the sum of its parts, is now documented science. But healers who grew their own medicine knew this intuitively for centuries. You don't extract, you use the whole plant in its season, prepared the way it was meant to be used. Let me go deeper into what that actually means in practice, because this is where the real power lives. Every plant has a primary growing season, and within that season, different parts of the plant carry different concentrations of medicine at different times. Roots are typically most potent in fall, when the plant draws its energy down into the ground before winter. Leaves are most potent just before flowering, when the plant is channeling energy upward and hasn't yet committed it to reproduction. Flowers carry different compounds than leaves. Seeds carry different compounds than flowers. A medicinal garden is not a static thing. It's a living pharmacy with a rotating stock, and the knowledge of when to harvest what is itself a form of medicine. Valerian root is one of the clearest examples. People know it as a sleep aid, and it works, but only if you harvest the root in its second year of growth in the fall after 2 full seasons of development. A first-year valerian root has a fraction of the valerianic acid content of a mature root. A root harvested in spring rather than fall is similarly diminished. This is knowledge that a pill bottle can never give you, because the pill bottle has already made all these decisions for you, and made them based on economics, not biology. The real meaning of growing your own medicine goes beyond individual plants. It's about rebuilding a relationship with your own body that modern culture has systematically dismantled. When you grow your own food and your own medicine, You become a participant in your health rather than a consumer of it. You develop what I can only call biological literacy, the ability to read your body's signals before they become symptoms, to recognize the early language of imbalance, and to respond with something that addresses the root cause rather than silencing the signal. Most chronic disease in the modern world is the result of long term imbalance, inflammation that was never addressed, stress responses that were never calmed, nutritional deficiencies that were never corrected. Plants grown in living soil and used consistently as food medicine address these imbalances slowly, continuously, and without side effects, because they are not foreign to the body. They are, in a very real sense, what the body expects. Our ancestors didn't distinguish between food and medicine the way we do. Every meal was also medicine: bitters before eating to stimulate digestion, herbs in cooking that reduced inflammation, roots in broth that supported the liver. This was not a healthcare system. It was a lifestyle that made a separate healthcare system largely unnecessary. The hidden layer underneath all of this is the soil. People talk about medicinal plants as if the plant itself is the medicine, but the plant is only as powerful as the soil it grows in. A calendula grown in depleted, chemically treated soil produces a fraction of the anti-inflammatory compounds of a calendula grown in rich, biologically active, living soil. The plant makes its compounds in response to stress, microbial interaction, and mineral availability. Take away the microbiome of the soil, and you take away the triggers that cause the plant to produce its medicine in the first place. This is why wild-crafted plants are often more potent than cultivated ones. The wild plant has experienced real stress, real competition, real environmental pressure. It has had to fight for its life, and in doing so, it has loaded itself with the compounds it needs to survive. The same compounds that support our survival when we consume them. When I built my medicinal garden, I spent the first 3 years building the soil. Compost, worm castings, mineral amendments, cover crops, no tilling, no chemicals. The garden that came after those 3 years of soil building produces medicine I trust with my health, and have trusted with my health for decades. The soil is not the background. The soil is the foundation of the entire system. Now, here's what connects all of this to a deeper principle, and it's something I've sat with for a long time. The body has an extraordinary capacity to heal itself when it is given what it needs and protected from what harms it. Modern medicine is brilliant at intervention, at saving lives in crisis, at managing acute conditions that would otherwise be fatal. But it was never designed for the maintenance of wellness. It was designed for the treatment of illness. Those are two entirely different projects. Growing your own medicine is a wellness project. It is the daily, seasonal, consistent practice of giving your body the botanical intelligence it was designed to work with, not as a reaction to disease, but as a prevention of it. The practical application of everything I'm describing starts smaller than people think. You don't need acres. You don't need a greenhouse. You need a few square feet of good soil and 5 plants that you learn deeply rather than 20 plants you know superficially. Start with what your body actually needs. If you struggle with sleep, grow valerian and passion flower. If inflammation is your issue, grow turmeric and calendula. If immune support is the priority, grow echinacea and elderberry. Learn those plants completely. Their growth cycle, their harvest window, their preparation methods, their contraindications. Become an expert in 5 before you add a 6th. There's another layer that almost nobody talks about, and it has to do with the relationship between the nervous system and the immune system. Two systems that Western medicine treated as entirely separate for most of the 20th century, and that we now know are in constant, intimate conversation. Chronic stress suppresses immune function, not as a metaphor, literally. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, directly inhibits the activity of natural killer cells, reduces antibody production, and shortens the lifespan of lymphocytes. If you are chronically stressed, and most people in the modern world are, your immune system is running at a fraction of its capacity, no matter how many supplements you take. This is where adaptogenic plants enter the picture, and they are perhaps the most misunderstood category in all of herbal medicine. Adaptogens, plants like ashwagandha, holy basil, rhodiola, and astragalus, work on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That's the central command system of your stress response. They don't sedate you, and they don't stimulate you. They normalize the stress response. They help the body return to baseline more quickly after a stressor, reduce the cortisol spike, and over time, rebuild the resilience of the entire system. I've grown ashwagandha for 30 years. It takes patience. The root needs 2 to 3 years before it's worth harvesting. But the medicine in a properly grown, properly cured ashwagandha root, is something no commercial supplement has ever replicated for me because I grew it in living soil, harvested it at the right time, and prepared it the right way. I'm getting the full intelligence of that plant, not a standardized extract calibrated to a single withanolide percentage. The deeper truth about adaptogens is that they represent a philosophy of medicine that is fundamentally different from the one most of us grew up with. They don't target a symptom, they build capacity. They make the system stronger, more resilient, more capable of self regulation. And that is a completely different relationship with medicine than taking something when you feel bad. That is medicine as daily practice, medicine as cultivation, medicine as a long term investment in the body's own intelligence. Preparation matters as much as the plant itself. Water extractions, teas, and infusions pull out water soluble compounds. Alcohol extractions, tinctures, pull out a broader spectrum, including resins and alkaloids that water alone won't carry. Oil infusions carry the fat soluble compounds. Knowing which preparation method to use for which plant and which condition is the difference between effective medicine and expensive compost water. A chamomile tea is a gentle nervine. A chamomile tincture in therapeutic doses is a meaningful anxiolytic. The plant is the same. The preparation changes everything. What I want you to understand, and this is the deepest truth I know after 50 years of practice, is that the act of growing your own medicine changes you, not just your health, you. You become someone who pays attention to seasons, to soil, to the slow language of plants. You become someone who trusts their body enough to listen to it before it breaks down. You become someone who takes responsibility for their own biology in a culture that has spent decades convincing you that your biology belongs to experts with prescription pads. It does not. It belongs to you. It always has. The knowledge was never lost. It was just buried under convenience, under marketing, under a system that profits from your dependence. It's in the ground, waiting to be grown back into your life. 50 years ago, I put my hands in the soil and started learning. My body has been grateful every single day since.